I'm going to show you exactly how I went from $0 to more than $1 million in just 7 weeks. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the 7 steps I took and the 4 mindset shifts that I had to go through in order to make that happen. My name is Uriel Kim. I'm the CEO and founder of Healthpreneur, New York Times bestselling author, and for the past 20 years, I've been building 7- and 8-figure businesses online and helping thousands of other health experts and coaches do the same. Now, a little bit of backstory. I started my first business online back in 2005. Prior to that, I worked as a trainer and nutritionist doing one-on-one for 7 years, and I was massively burnt out. So, my first business, I had no clue what I was doing. It was relatively early on in the internet days, and I just did a bunch of stuff with no rhyme or reason, no roadmap and nothing. And it took me 7 years to hit my first $1 million in that business. It was very complicated. We had lots of products, lots of funnels, lots of different offers. Typically, they were lower priced, right? So we had membership sites, we had information products like ebooks and so forth. We actually got into physical products like supplements and then started selling courses in the several hundreds of dollars as we went through. But the business became overly complicated, and I started to recognize that simplicity scales and complexity fails. Nonetheless, we had a lot of stuff going on, and that business was largely built on content. I made a lot of mistakes in my time, but one of the things that I think I did well was, generate a lot of content that was useful to a lot of people. Eventually, that business took off, but it took 7 years, and I want to help you avoid taking 7 years to hit your first $1 million. With that business, we eventually wanted to help 500,000 people to better health. I became a #2 New York Times bestseller. I had 3 best-selling published books. I was on Dr. Oz, The Doctors, the whole bit. But the thing was, I just got tired of that business. It was very exhausting, and I was just kind of over talking about nutrition and health for 13 plus years by that point. So I sold the company, and in 2017, I started Healthpreneur, the current business that I now run. A lot of other health experts were asking me for business advice, and I thought to myself, maybe this is my next chapter. Maybe this is my opportunity to help other health experts grow their businesses so that collectively we can help more people. I want to help 1 billion people transform their lives. That's my mission. That's my vision. I'm not going to get there by myself. So I thought Healthpreneur would be the best next step. So here's the challenge though. I said to myself, there's no way I'm going to repeat the previous business that I had built. I had sold that for a reason. I wanted to start something that was a lot more streamlined, a lot simpler, and it could help me move faster. So I'm going to walk you through the 7 things I did differently. And unfortunately, this is stuff that no one was telling it, no one was teaching or talking about at the time. And still to this day, most people don't follow this advice. I want to share this with you so you don't have to go through the trials and tribulations that I went through so you can achieve faster results in your business. Whether that's making $1 million or 500,000 or 100,000, it doesn't matter. So the first thing that I did was I identified a single target market. In my first business, I was a generalist. I was trying to help everyone. Weight loss, energy, gaining muscle, running faster. It was we all know that everyone wants a specialist, and generalists generally don't make as much money and they burn out from a lot of the one-on-one nonsense. In a business online, in a coaching business, it's very hard to scale if you try to help everyone. It's quite, to be honest, it's impossible. So, single target market. I decided I wanted to only help health experts. That was part 1 of it. But specifically, I wanted to help them do what I had done myself, which is to build a coaching business online. And that was the premise of single target market. And there's 2 components to that. It's what's the problem that I'm solving. So the second piece here is we have a single target market. That's step 1. The second step was, okay, within that group of health experts, because I was one of those guys, what's the problem that I am best suited to help them solve? So the second step was really thinking about, okay, if I could sell anything, if I can solve a problem, which is why every business exists to solve a problem, which problem is am I best suited to solve and is most likely congruent with what the market wants most? So in my conversations, again, people are just asking me for business advice, and the questions were usually related to how do I get more clients? How do I grow my revenue? How do I make more? And it was all front-end client acquisition stuff. It wasn't so much about the back end. There was a few things here and there, but the majority of it was the front end. So I thought to myself, okay, so the single problem that I can help solve is how to get clients faster, how to get clients in a way that's a lot more systemized. So that was step 2. So we now had a single target market, health experts wanting to grow their business online, not brick and mortar. I was a very clear delineation. I'm not helping you grow your brick and mortar. I don't philosophically believe building a prison is a good idea. That's the other way I look at a brick and mortar, because you're tied to it, you have no freedom, etc. Second was we identified the single problem for that target market, which is how do I get more clients more predictably, more consistently, without having to rely on word of mouth, referrals, or spending 7 years creating content before I can actually get some traction. So the third decision that I made was, okay, I'm going to stop selling Band-Aids. I started to recognize that I needed to stop selling tips where transformation was required, because part of why I wanted to get out of my previous business was I was selling books and courses and information that was really great, but most people did nothing with it. And that's because the less people pay, the less they pay attention. And I thought to myself, I really sat with this for a while and I said, if I really, really want to transform someone's life and their business, what would that look like? And I started to have it, I started to map this out and I said, okay, well, if this is what this looks like, what am I, if I'm going to show up and I'm going to work with these people a lot more hands-on, what is that going to look like? And so I started to architect what I, in my mind, thought was the ideal scenario at the time. And it was not just here's a tip to just get more leads. It was the whole system. And this became the architecture for now what we call the perfect client pipeline, which was the system, ironically, that I actually used at the time to make all this stuff happen in this business. So I stopped selling Band-Aids and tips when the full transformation was required. And I think this is something that's really important to think about as a health expert. If someone comes to you with a health condition, think about how you can resolve the whole thing. Don't just give them the small, tiny solution that's going to solve a fraction of it. Give them the full thing. Because if they come to you with high A1C levels and type 2 diabetes, what if you could just help them solve that full on? Now, with that comes a price point. So for me, I said, okay, well, if this is the outcome, so we have the problem, this is the outcome we're going to help them get to. So no predictable way to get clients. Now I'm going to help you install a more predictable way to get clients. What is that outcome worth to this type of business owner? Well, hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe millions. What am I going to charge for that? And at the time, I just picked a number out of thin air, based on what I thought my time was worth and so forth. And it was $5,000 for a 2-day live workshop. And that's actually how our HBA, our Health and Business Accelerator coaching program started. It was a 2-day live workshop. And for about 2 years, we did 3 2-day live workshops throughout the year. So we did one in Toronto, one in Florida, one in LA. And that was how I basically taught the perfect client pipeline. That's what it started with. But then as I started to get through these workshops, I started to recognize that people probably needed a bit more support and had some more questions and would benefit from having more hands-on support and accountability and coaching beyond the 2 days. And over time, it evolved from the 2 days into what it is now, which is, a much more in-depth program with obviously a higher price point as well. But that's where I started, because I said to myself, if I could spend 2 days with someone and give them the whole system to solve this problem once and for all, what would that look like? As opposed to, here's a lead man to get more clients. That's not going to help. So the big transition for me from my first business that took me forever to this one was really let's just solve the problem once and for all. Because if we can solve this, that's going to open up a huge amount of opportunity for the people we're serving. So the fourth thing that I just mentioned, I just want to remind you of this, was that I decided to sell at a premium price point. I realized that if I wanted to hit whatever the financial objectives I'd set were, it would require fewer people if I was charging more than trying to get tons of people charging less. I figured I could work closer with people at a higher price point. I wouldn't have to have the same volume of people coming through to hit whatever the said point was. Now, for me at the time, it just ended up being $1 million that we made. So I didn't need as many people to make $1 million as I did to, again, we had 200 clients-ish, around $5,000, somewhere in that neighborhood, who came to the workshops. That's $1 million, right? 200 times 5K. If I charged $100, I would have needed whatever that is, 20,000 people or 10,000 people, whatever the number was. It's a much different ballgame, and I didn't want to play that. The fifth thing that I did was I identified a single way to get clients. So this was a big, big, big shift, and this is actually what I taught, because this actually works so well, so quickly, that this became the foundation for what I taught. And this is a big philosophy of mine, or a big principle of ours at Healthpreneur, is we only teach what we've personally mastered. So what happened was I started to look at, okay, what did I do in my previous business that worked really, really well? Now, I had done a lot of stuff, right? Like YouTube, podcasts, membership sites, all sorts of different things. But I said, when it came to getting clients, what was out of all the stuff we did, out of all the mistakes and all the lessons we learned, what's the one thing I did better than maybe anyone at the time? It was webinars. I love teaching, but there's also a very specific way to teach, and I call this teach to sell. In, let's say, like YouTube format, for instance, like this is more like teach to teach. But in a webinar, it's more of like teach to sell. And a lot of the mistakes that I'd seen people make was they were hosting these events, whether it was, a webinar or anything else, and no one was doing anything after the webinar. They're like, oh my God, this is amazing. Thank you so much. Have a nice life. But what I had become very, very good at in my previous business was selling products, courses, and coaching through webinars. I remember one moment specifically, we actually had a greens powder that we just launched. I had actually formulated it in my kitchen. It's actually still in the market. It's called Energy Greens. It's amazing. 8 raw superfoods, tastes great. And so we were launching this to our email list, and I decided to sell this through a webinar. And I also decided to think to myself, well, this is now, like, if I just sell the product by itself, it's a commodity like every other greens powder on the market. So we were able to package this in a way that we were able to sell it for north of about $400, not one, tin, but like, in the way that we had built the package. So no one generally is going to go to a website and pay $400 for a supplement. So what we did is we put this package together, and then we had to make a case for it. So we put a webinar together, and I remember I was actually going to Hawaii for a 5-day trip, and we set this thing up, and it was an evergreen webinar. And I remember we left Toronto, I'm on the plane, 12-hour flight, and I land in Honolulu, and I check our stats. We had made more than $56,000 in sales in the 12 hours I was on the plane. And I thought to myself, this was amazing. And that was just one example of how our webinars were so effective for our business. So I said, okay, when I started Healthpreneur, I said, okay, how can I add value and move people into the next step using webinars? I was like, I think this makes the most sense. It's like a skill set I have. I know how to, I know the psychology. I know how to move people through this. I know how to put this together. I was like, great. Okay, cool. So now we have a webinar. How do we get people to that? So I thought to myself, well, am I going to create content forever again? No, I'm not going to play that game. What are we going to do instead? So I'm like, well, I kind of figured out ads as well in my previous business. In the later stages of that business, I started to crack the code around Facebook ads, and I was very, very good at doing that. So I said to myself, okay, cool. Let's figure this out with Facebook ads. Let's drive Facebook ads to this evergreen masterclass or this evergreen webinar. It's running 24/7. I'm not live on it. We're not doing live webinars because those are dead. Show-up rates are horrible unless you're charging for it. So we're like, okay, cool. We're not going to sell like a couple $100 course. Like that's not going to transform anyone. So again, we're selling a live 2-day experience. It's $5,000. So I thought to myself, well, I probably have to get on the phone with people and speak to them because they don't know, if I'm running ads, they don't even know me, right? These are cold prospects who've probably never seen my stuff, even though I've been online since 2005. So I said, okay, cool. So I don't necessarily know how to sell that well, but I'm going to figure this out. That became the perfect client pipeline. So Facebook ads to a webinar evergreen. From the webinar, people could apply to speak with me. And then we'd have a 45 to 60 minute call. And then the offer was to join us at one of the 2-day workshops. And that was how we built the business to 7 figures in just 7 weeks. So if you can think through the math here, I had to do a lot of calls. And to go from nothing to $1 million in 7 weeks, I was doing like 6-7 calls a day in some cases. Now, I knew I wasn't going to do that forever. But what I was doing here is I was building the assets and the foundation and the learning and the skill to then be able to take that and transfer it to other people over time, namely other people on my team who could assist me doing these calls. And also, I knew that I was teaching our clients how to run this very system. So I also needed to get very, very good so I could teach them how to have these calls. So I did a lot of calls for quite some time, and obviously then built out a sales team, and I don't really do the calls anymore. So that was the system that we built, and then we tested and perfected. Now, for the first 3 years of this business, we did nothing else other than that. Then I had 2 clients who were like, dude, you should really get on Instagram. Like this is back in 2019, 2020. They're like, man, like this Instagram thing, it's a pretty big deal. I'm like, I don't want to take pictures of my lunch. I don't care, whatever. They're like, just give it a shot. And so 3 years into the business, we had no YouTube, no podcast, no Instagram, no social media following, nothing. Ironically, before doing any of that stuff, we actually decided to do a big annual event called Healthpreneur Live, which we started in, I believe, the 2nd year of business, which is not a great idea if you don't have a big audience to begin with. But nonetheless, we pulled it off, and we were selling tickets at more than $3,000 for an amazing experience. It was awesome. But nonetheless, we had one way to get clients, which is our perfect client pipeline. We did that one live event for the year, and that was just the only other thing we did. But I had nothing else. There was no content. There was nothing. And then 3 years in, once we had perfected this system, this one way to get clients, then we started looking at, okay, do we have the resources and bandwidth to consider a social media channel, to start creating some content? Because although content takes forever to build and generate eyeballs from, it's the single best way to build your brand, right? You add more value to the world. Eventually people know, like, and trust you. And the more goodwill you put out there, the more comes back to you. And I had seen this firsthand in my first business. The problem was that it just took forever. But now, because I had this system, this foundation, I was building the business largely on autopilot. Now, I still had to do the calls, but everything else was pretty much running predictably. I would just see, appointments booked on my calendar with qualified prospects who had gone through the gauntlet, who are kind of already drinking the Kool-Aid, if you will. So they're showing up on calls like, yeah, this makes a lot of sense. Like, tell me more about this. It wasn't like cold prospects who didn't know anything. So we had really perfected that for 3 years. Then we started one at a time adding in a layer. So it was Instagram initially, then eventually it was YouTube, and now it is what it is, right? And now obviously we have a much bigger business with a bigger team. We have more resources and bandwidth to do other things. So, but here's the message is, like, if you're early on in business, and when I say early on, I'm going to say sub $1 million, you have to have one way to get clients and absolutely master that. Because so many people we speak with are like, oh yeah, I've done a webinar already. I'm like, I don't fucking care. How much money are you making? They're like, $5,000 a month. I'm like, dude, you're like, you have nothing in place. You have a webinar. Congratulations. But you understand there's a very big difference between having a webinar or a funnel that makes you $5,000 a month and having the same thing that makes you $1 million a month. There's no difference, but there's a very big difference. It's all the nuances, all the time and attention you obsess over the small details. And the mistake that I made, and I don't fault anyone for doing this, because this is what I did in my first business, was I said, oh, cool, the pages are up, the funnel's ready, ship it. Let's go to the next funnel. I thought just having the funnel itself was enough. It's not. Right? All the nuances of the messaging, the offer, all these little things you're not even aware of. You focus on when you do one thing only, and you obsess over the details and the data and so forth. And that's how you make something really pop, is you focus on one thing and you absolutely drill as deep as humanly possible until you strike oil. Hey, we'll get back to the video in just a moment, but if you're enjoying this content, hit that subscribe button below. It will help me sleep a lot better at night. But more importantly for you, it'll help you build your dream a lot faster. So go ahead, subscribe, and we'll get back to the show. The sixth thing that I had to get really good at was, okay, so we had this single target market, single problem. We had this really awesome thing that we're selling people into. We had one way to get clients in, and we're running ads. So we had to figure out a way to be profitable as quickly as humanly possible. I didn't have a briefcase of cash, nor do I recommend you have one that you're going to use to run your ads. You can't pay Facebook in cash. You use a credit card. So I, at the time, had a Visa, then obviously got an Amex, because I'm like, well, if I get more travel points, maybe I'll never have to pay for travel, which has been the case. So here's the deal is I started small. I didn't have to go crazy, but I started off at a couple $100s a day. And then I started looking at the numbers and I'm like, oh, this is good. I'm paying this much for a lead, paying this much for a call booked. If I have this many calls, I'm enrolling this many people. So I'm making $5,000 on $500 ad spend or $1,000 ad spend. Shit, let's just keep doing that forever. And this is a really important mindset shift that I'll get into in a moment, but I'll just mention it here, is like, when you run ads, you're not actually using cash. You're using fictitious future money. When you have a credit card, you pay Facebook with a credit card. So let's just say $1,000 goes on your credit card, and that can be in whatever time frame you use, a day, a week, a month, it doesn't matter. $1,000. Okay, cool. If I have a client that pays me $5,000, I take $1,000, I pay off my credit card, not with my own cash, but from the money I got from acquiring a client. This is called client finance acquisition. And this is how we were able to grow so quickly, is because I didn't have to use my own cash. I just leveraged credit and I just kept inserting right back into the system. So all of that profit was just continually injected. So if I started off at, a couple $100 a day, then it grew, and then $1,000 a day, then $2,000 a day. And then I just keep scaling the ad spend, because all of it is profitable, or to a large degree profitable, that I can then pay off the credit card as soon as humanly possible. And I thought to myself, even if I had to let it sit on my credit card for a couple months, I couldn't quite pay it off in time. Who cares? As long as cash flow is able to keep up, I'd be okay. But anyways, my whole goal from day one was, how do I become cash flow positive in the first 30 days? This is known as the buyback period or the payback period. So when you look at what it costs you, so CAC, cost to acquire a client, is how much it costs to acquire a client. Let's say it's $1,000. You pay $1,000 to enroll one client. Lifetime value, or LTV, I'll just keep it simple. In this case, was the cost or the investment of our program. So we'll call it $5,000. Now that doesn't include down the road lifetime value. I'm just going to keep it simple for now. So in this case, my CAC, my LTV to CAC ratio, $5,000 value of a client to $1,000 to acquire them was 5-to-1. Does that make sense? Now, if those clients are paying me $5,000 up front, that $5,000 covers my ad spend instantaneously. So we actually had $5,000 pay in full, or I think we had a payment plan as well. It may have been 2 or 3 payments. But here's the thing is, if you don't collect enough cash up front, then you're not able to pay back what it costs to acquire clients. And that's where some people get a little bit, antsy around running ads. So some of the things that we did in the early couple years of Healthpreneur was, as ad costs started increasing, and they're only going in one direction, which is up, we started charging more upfront. So there was a bigger initial payment so that we could put that against the ad spend. The other thing was that we started looking at offering a premium option for the service, right? Or the coaching program. So there was let's say the basic level, and then there's a premium option, which is more expensive. And obviously there's the option to pay in full. So when you combine these different opportunities, the goal is to how do we get more cash up front so that if we spend in a month $10,000, as long as we make more than $10,000, we're good. So here's the cool thing is in 84 consecutive months, from that time in 2017, 84 consecutive months, which is about 5, 6, I don't even know, 7 years, whatever it is. Every single month we've been cash flow positive right away. And what I mean by that is on the initial payment. So let's say that someone puts down the first payment, whether it's the pay in full or the first payment of the payment plan. I don't even look at the contract value. I don't even care about what's coming in recurring. I'm not looking at that against ad spend. I'm looking at what did we collect on the first payment from all the clients we enrolled, and that cash collected, as it's known, was that more than what we spent in ads? And in 84 months in a row, the answer is yes. And that's why we teach this system to our clients, because we've literally perfected it. So figuring out how to profitably get clients in your first 30 days is like winning the lottery, because then it's like, how fast can you scale this? Because that's like, why 30 days? Why not 15? Why not 45? Well, typically like credit cards, you can run balances interest-free for about 30 days. So again, and it's also on monthly cycles. It's very easy. Like if you're tracking your data, which we'll get to next, you look at August, you look at September, it's like, cool, we spent this amount, we made this amount. So it's a lot cleaner from a tracking perspective. So that leads me to the 7th thing that I did to go from 0 to $1 million was I tracked my numbers like a hawk. And I'm talking about spreadsheets, baseline data. We have a critical number sheet that we now give to all of our clients, which is based on this initial stuff, which was what was my ad spend, what was the cost per click, cost per lead, cost per call book, lead to call book ratio, show rate, close rate, book to close rate, CAC, all this stuff. The whole thing is listed down, and it's like daily and then weekly and then monthly. And then we look at this and we're like, cool, awesome, this is working. And then everything is tracked back to the granular level of the ads. Now, if this sounds like a little bit of work, hey, welcome, it was. But guess what? If I can go from 0 to $1 million in 7 weeks, do you think it's worth it? Fuck yeah, right? And I also know in the back of my mind, I'm building this system and I'm perfecting it because now this is going to be the main vehicle that we give and teach to our clients, which has been true for the past 8 years. So I'm not just going to tinker with this. I'm going to master this. If you want to grow your business, no matter what type of vehicle or business model you're using, you have to learn which data points or metrics you can track that are going to move the needle. And this was one of the very frustrating things about content is in my first business, we grew our YouTube channel to 300,000 subscribers. We had a blog, urielcame.com, which got to 1.4 million visitors per month. But the challenge was it was very hard to determine the metrics that were actually going to move the needle. So for instance, on our blog, we were posting up to 5 content pieces per day. We had a whole editorial team, $35,000 a month, just an editorial payroll, massive blog post, like 2,000 to 5,000 words, like friggin' books. That was the game we were playing. But the problem was that we didn't know, if we pull this lever, we get more of this. It was very unpredictable, and it's not as cause and effect as you get with ads. And that's why I love advertising, because if I pay $1.14, here's exactly what I'm getting in return, or whatever the numbers might be in your case. So those are the 7 things that allowed me to go from 0 to $1 million in 7 weeks. I want to finish by sharing 4 important mindset shifts that I had to make, going from a business that was largely based on sweat equity and grind, content, and time, to one that was actually running a business like a business, running, ads into a pipeline, tracking data. So the first one was really adopting this investor mindset. I'll backtrack. From 2005 to 2009, I tried doing everything by myself, and I was broke. I was making less than poverty line income. And in 2010, I hired my first coach. It was $18,000. I didn't make $18,000 my year previous to that in business. So it was more money than I made in my whole year in business previous to that. The investor mindset is saying, well, there's going to be a risk, and there's also going to be a reward. The bigger the risk, the bigger the reward, typically. And that's why entrepreneurs get paid the most, because we are willing to take on risk that most other people are not willing to take on. But it's calculated risks, right? So if I'm investing in a coach, I'm not like, the risk is in the investor, not the investment. If I'm investing in myself, that's the best investment I can ever make. And so that was my first taste of this kind of investor mindset of like, I wasn't where I wanted to be financially. I didn't have the money, but if I could leverage credit again and build the skills, I would make the money down the road. So when I came to this, it was really around, okay, well, I don't need thousands of dollars in cash sitting around. I just need a credit card. Okay, cool. I thought to myself, it's kind of like a combination to a safe. I just have to figure out, the combination of the creative, the messaging, the offer, all these little it's all these little numbers here, right? Like from a combination. If I can turn it this way and turn it that way, I just need to crack the code. And that's how I looked at this. And I looked at this from an investor mindset and also from a detective mindset. So detective mindset is understanding, okay, what are we seeing? What's working? What's the messaging? What's the offer? What's not quite working here? What's working better there? But the investor mindset was more around, don't worry, hey, if I'm a couple $1,000s in the red, it's all good. What are the metrics that are indicating that we're moving in the right direction? As an example, one of our clients back in 2019, the first post that they were celebrating inside of our HBA community was the fact that they were negative $14,000 in the hole. Negative $14,000 in ad spend. And they were celebrating that because at the end of the post, they're like, oh yeah, we have about 314 calls on the calendar. So can you imagine 314 calls? You think a few of those are going to turn into clients. So they go from that, and within 3 months, they go from making nothing to $352,000 per month. 4 months later, $1 million a month. A few months after that, $3.2 million a month. That's how fast all this can happen when you have data and you can reverse engineer into that. But not if you play it small and not if you play it safe. So this is about thinking like an investor where it's like, I was willing to lose some in order to gain a lot. And I looked at my ad spend as learning, just fast tracked. I'm like, I could take forever trying to learn, or I could just spend it faster. Like if I spend $1,000 in an hour, I will learn faster than if I spent it over a month. So I thought to myself, I'm going to spend the money anyways. Let's just spend it faster, and I can just course correct and pivot as fast as humanly possible. And that's what I did, right? So it would have taken me a lot longer to hit $1 million if I was less willing to take on this risk. But I thought to myself, the bigger risk is taking forever. I would rather move quickly. I can always make more money. I can never make more time. The second mindset shift was I expected most things not to work. And this also helped because I had been in business previously for 13 years. And I realized that most of the stuff you put out there, like your content, your emails, your ads, they're not going to work. Maybe 10% of it does. So I thought to myself, my mantra was, I'm just one ad away. I'm one ad away. If I have 10 ads and none of them worked, I'm like, cool, awesome. Maybe it's the next one. And maybe it's the next one. And I've written, I could literally show you Google Docs, but I've got thousands of ads that I've personally written over the years. I'm not too cool for school. I'm not going to outsource this to some copywriter or some BA. I write the ads. You should write your ads. You know your messaging, you know your market, and it's one of the most high leverage things you can do. I have written ads and shot video ads that took me a combined couple of hours that had generated tens of millions of dollars for our business. Do you think that's a good use of my time? Yeah, it's a good use of your time as well. Because contrary to content, you create an ad, which is just call it a message and an image or a video. That's an asset that works for you 24/7. And if it doesn't work, Who cares? You learn from it. What can we learn? What am I gathering from this? And then how can I take those learnings and put it into something that might work the next time? And when it does work, what am I learning? How do I do more of that? If you find an angle that works, just keep doubling down on that same angle over and over and over again. So that instead of spending 10 hours creating ads that don't work, you spend 10 hours creating 3 ads that work, or you spend 10 hours creating 5 ads that work. So you just become more effective because you're learning from the process. But if you expect most of your stuff to crush it right out of the gate, it's not going to work. It's not going to happen. The best batting average of all time is I believe it's 0.386. Ty Cobb. That means he didn't even hit the ball 6 out of 10 times. The best tennis players of all time, Djokovic, Nadal, Federer, they won just over 50% of the points they played. That's crazy. Just over half of them, like when you look at a match, just over 50% of the points. That means they lost almost 50% of the points they played. And they're still the best tennis players of all time. Small margins. So don't expect everything to work well. It's not. The key, and this is leading to the third mindset, is taking the mindset of test, learn, iterate, scale. Test, learn, iterate, scale, okay? You test something, everything in marketing is a test. So marketing equals testing. That's it. You have a hypothesis. I think this message is going to work. I think this video will do well. And if it doesn't, don't take it personally. Who cares? Learn. What can I learn from the data? What is the data telling me? Does this have a high click-through rate? Okay, cool. What is it about that may have contributed to that? Good to know. All right, that's the learning. Okay, the iteration is, okay, now that I know that, what can I do the next time I write this ad or use this type of image from that learning to make this next version a little bit better? Cool. I try that. It works a little bit better. And now when you find that winning combination, you can scale. And you just keep repeating that loop over and over again. So it's test, learn, iterate, scale. It's not ad goes live, I win the lottery. No. It's test. It's probably not going to work out, but what can I learn? Let me iterate and let me scale when it does. That's it. Okay. So expect most of the stuff not to work. Welcome to the real world. It's not going to, but all you need is a very small percentage of your stuff to work for it to change your life. I have written thousands of ads, and I would say that maybe there's 24 that had changed my life forever. So just to give you some context of the numbers. And the final mindset, number 4 here, is progress over pretty and perfect every single day of the week. The single best video ad I have ever produced, I've ever shot, was shot on a whim in a green Nike hoodie. Not the best representation of the market I'm serving. I'm like facing the sun, so my face is red. And that one video that was shot on a whim from my phone, best video ad of all time, has generated tens of millions of dollars for our business. By contrast, I have done professional video shoots with fancy productions and several day setups and all sorts of fancy hooplas. And those videos absolutely bombed. Now, I'm not saying a professional video shoot is going to not do well. What I am saying, though, is people, especially on social media, native is going to work better most of the time. What I mean by native is this something that you would naturally post on your Facebook profile? If it's not, then maybe it's overly produced and it's going to stand out like a sore thumb, not in a great way. Like it looks like an ad. So don't worry about making stuff pretty and perfect. To be honest, the uglier it looks, the better it's going to perform. Our clients ask us, Yuri, why don't we have like pretty branded webinars? Do you know why? Because after creating thousands of them, ugly works. You don't need to make it pretty. No one gives a shit about that. It's actually a distraction from the message. We don't worry about pretty websites. You know why? Because people don't see them. On your landing page, simple, very short, and keeping it almost ugly. Why? Why do you think? Because it converts. So are you here to appease your ego of making things look pretty, or do you actually want to get clients and make money? Because they don't ultimately do the same thing. So everything we do is about making progress and just getting things out there in the 1.0 version. You can certainly make things a little bit nicer over time, but please don't think you have to have everything perfect. It's like so many health professionals are waiting for their ducks to be in a row, for like their fucking logo to be redesigned. No one gives a shit about your logo. No one sees your website. No one gives a crap about your branding. And branding, by the way, is not your colors. It's the association. It's the emotion. It's the feeling they have when they see you and your brand and your messaging. Okay. It's not about colors and logos and garbage like that. Do not waste your time. I have spoken to so many health experts who are like, yeah, I'm just on the 275th version of our logo. I'm like, what are you doing? What's your revenue at? Oh, we're not making any revenue yet. I'm like, what are you talking about? The only thing that matters when you're sub $1 million is getting clients and making money, period. End of story. You're good enough to help those people on the back end. Okay, you can figure that piece out. But until you actually make money by getting clients, you don't have a business. So everything I'm sharing with you here is like cutting the fluff and getting right to the core of what matters. Single target market, one core problem, one transformational solution, which in this case is a coaching program that is priced at a premium price point, several $1,000s maybe in your case, to solve a problem. Number 5 is we have one way to get clients. We don't have it's one pipeline, one funnel, one way to get clients in. That's it. Number 6 is we figure out how do we set up payment terms to be profitable in the first 30 days so that we're never bottlenecked by cash flow. And 7 is we track our data like a hawk, okay? If you do those 7 things, the likelihood of you succeeding a lot faster is gonna be much greater. So if you've enjoyed this video, I hope you have. I hope it's given you some insight into how we've grown our business now to multiple 8 figures, but more importantly, how we grew it so quickly early on. Now, if you'd like to get our $1 million health coaching roadmap, that will show you, number 1, how to audit. We'll actually audit your business live in this video. You'll have a scorecard. You'll be able to score different aspects of your business. You'll get a health score for your business, if you will. And then in the training, I'll show you how to improve the scores and therefore increase the amount of money in your bank account in that actual training. So I'm going to give you the whole roadmap. If you want to check that out, it's in the link in the description, or it might pop up on the screen here. So that's your next stop. Hope you've enjoyed this one, and I'll see you over there.